Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Go Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go Toronto, go. Go Argos, go, go, go.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 20, the season final of the Argo Bounce live audio show with Chris Pomay and Nick Small, a weekly podcast show devoted to the CFL's now 19-time Grey Cup champion, Toronto Argonauts. And as this is their season final, it's a great way to end it with a Grey Cup championship as the Argos won their 19th Grey Cup with a 41-24 win over Winnipeg. The score says blowout, but it really wasn't a blowout until maybe 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Nick Arbuckle, it was the MVP, and his story, it was similar to Nick Foles winning the Super Bowl for the Eagles in 52 against a heavily favored Patriots team and Tom Brady. And Dejan Brissett, Mississauga native, was the most outstanding Canadian as well. And before we bring on my co-host Nick Small, Toronto Argonauts have been around 151 years, 25 Grey Cup appearances, 19 Grey Cup championships. But since I've been around, they have been in 11 Grey Cups and they've won 9. And to me, this stretch from 1982 to 2024 might be the best stretch of football in Toronto Argonauts history. And we're going to bring on my co-host Nick Small here on this Thursday, November 21st, 2024. And Nick, you were at the game, so let's get right down to it. What was that experience like, the whole Grey Cup experience in Vancouver, BC?
Yeah, well, forget streak in football. That might be the best streak in all of pro sports. To cover 4 decades now, I guess 5, to go with winning championships every time they've been there. It's quite a spectacular thing. Yep, as you can see here, my little Grey Cup Festival pins, Grey Cup pins. I was there for the game, and I gotta say, for the final, the Grey Cup was something that like everybody goes to, regardless of who ends up playing. A lot of the people who attend will go, whether it's in Hamilton, whether it's in Vancouver, whether it's in Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, Calgary. It doesn't matter. They'll go to the other side of the world if it's there. But the Grey Cup Festival, the celebration, the unity of all the teams in a 19 league brought together is just something that I think is unmatched by any sport. The fact that you can go down, you can attend the championship game for a couple $100. You can attend the Grey Cup Festival, all the parties. There's usually a big shutdown street festival. There's party halls in the convention center where they have live music going every single night. It's an absolutely incredible thing, and the whole week is a celebration of Canadian football, something that's unparalleled by any sport out there.
Out of 5 stars, what would you give the Grey Cup experience in Vancouver this year?
Oh, 5 out of 5. It was a stupendous job that Amar Doman and the crew out in BC for the host committee did. All the events we went to were great. Food was good. The social events were awesome. It was great to network with a whole bunch of friends. Anybody who's been following me this week on my social media would have seen probably like 2-3 dozen photos of fans, family, CFL family that we've met over the trip there and from previous engagements. The fact that people go to other ends of the country to watch their team play is awesome. And then to cap it all off with the CFL Fans Fight Cancer event, I have to stop and cut on this because so I think by Labor Day, they reached their goal of 40,000. And by the end, I think they were up to $75,000 that they donated to the Michael Ciccone Foundation by the end, which is absolutely phenomenal. Nearly double the original goal set at the beginning of the year.
We got some comments here, Nick. I want to get to them first. Zachary says, awesome, Grey Cup. Thank you, Zach, for watching us. And then Rick from the Tiger Cats Talk Network. Congrats, boys, on your victory in Grey Cup. I call it now the Argo Cup, not the Grey Cup. And here's a tough question for you guys. Out of all the free agents listed by 3 Down Nation, what free agents of the Argos do you not see returning because of raises? I'm immediately going to say Nick Arbuckle won. That's my first one.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I'm bringing it up now because I know Rick put up he had his own chart that he did listing all the free agents, and I know I'm not going to remember them all if I don't have his screen up there. Yeah, I mean Nick Arbuckle comes up as number 1, but I think the challenge right now, and this isn't just on him, this is across quarterbacks across the league. There's a lot of guys who are becoming free agents this year, and there's only 9 teams that are there, and a lot of them already have their starting quarterback set in stone. Toronto, obviously, Chad Kelly's going to stay number 1 when he gets healthy again. Ottawa, I think it's pretty safe that Brown's going to stay with Drew Brown. BC's committed to Nathan Rourke. Hamilton
and Montreal.
Levi Mitchell, yeah, Montreal with Cody Fajardo. It really leaves like Edmonton, Calgary, and maybe Saskatchewan, I think, are kind of the only ones left.
Good points. And Wynton McManus is a free agent. So I'm going to say this, Nick. Pinball Clements, who's ever watching from the Argos management, give Wynton McManus whatever money he wants. Give him as many years. To me, he's going to become an all-time great Argo. And to me, he's the leader of the defense. And Nick, this team didn't really start playing better defensively when he was out. So to me, he is the captain of that defense and team for a reason. So I'm hoping out of all their free agents, I would love to see them keep them all, Nick, but I know it's not feasible because it's a business.
Oh, yeah.
But when McManus deserves to finish his career off as a Toronto Argonaut, and I'm sure others out there will say that. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, we saw last year too when he came in there just and re-signed, just how excited everybody was that he was coming back, and they had that challenge between deciding, it seemed, between Wynton McManus and out in Ottawa when they had to choose between him and Adarius Pickett, and of course they did end up going with McManus. Some of the other challenges that are going to be tricky: Jared Brinkman, Jake Serezna, and Robbie Smith are all set to be released. Pending free agency, Janarian Grant, Kadeem Carey, who they brought in this year, John Haggerty, their global punter, not to mention a number of their defensive backs, Adeleke, Amos, McFadden, Priester, and Metier. So there's a whole whackload of guys on all sides of the ball. So it's going to be the challenge there because you're not going to be able to bring in everybody back. Janarian Grant, if I didn't mention him as well. So there's a number of guys there who we might not see again as an Argonaut, which is too bad. But again, shout out to Rick for taking the liberties and making the list. Like, the Argonauts is actually the second shortest list of pending free agents right now after Hamilton. Some of the other teams in this list have names a mile long. More than half the team is potentially up for renewal or release, depending on how the free agency scenario goes. So it leaves a lot of opportunities available. Like, I love the story about Kadeem Carey coming from Calgary, coming here. I thought that was an amazing signing because he was injured last year. Everybody slept on Kadeem Carey. I wonder if, assuming you can't get Carey back, do you ever go for someone like William Stanback, maybe? So like
you got to bring Carey back. Out of all their free agents, there's 3 that they need to keep: McManus, Jake Serezna, and Carey. Jake Serezna, at first, I was disappointed because I was a Curly Gittins Jr. guy. I've interviewed him. good guy, great receiver, part of the 22 Grey Cup team. But the Argonauts made a great trade, trading Curley to Edmonton for Jake Sorenza. So if I was the Argonauts GM, Nick, and I could do it, I would get McManus, Sorenza, and Carey back. And also do the Toronto discount. Wouldn't you rather take less money and play for a Grey Cup championship team than to get the big contract and play for a team that has no chance? That's how the New England Patriots did it for 20 years. So I'm hoping Pinball Clements can have this thing called the Argo way, where guys will take a little less to stay in Toronto and to win. So we'll see. It's a business, but to me, those are the three guys I'd like to keep the most. Not that I
Yeah,
wouldn't want to keep all of them. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, definitely. There's the appeal of the fact that you can use Toronto as a city itself too, as a world class city, as a means of leverage as well, compared to a place like, um, I won't say them, but you know which places that don't necessarily have a lot going on. And while there's other trade offs where typically the players are more recognized by the team there, where in Toronto, not many people are going to be able to recognize someone like Wynn McManus, even though anybody who follows the Argos can recognize him at a moment's glance. The most of the city just simply aren't football fans. The other thing to keep in mind too is they have to keep the ratio in mind when they're re-signing these guys. That's why I think someone like Robbie Smith might be more likely that they're able to re-sign compared to someone like Serezna or Brinkman, because maintaining that ratio is such an important part. I see someone like Tunde Adeleke in the same side as that. Same with someone like between guys like Priester or Metier, and of course Haggerty being a global player is even larger. The fact that you can have between him and the kicker in Edmonton, they're probably the two best punters in the league. So, and you need a global player on your roster, so that puts a lot more value on a guy like John Haggerty. So, yeah, it's kind of the fun part right now. And I mean, we're so early into the silly season that we don't know necessarily. Half these guys could be re-signed within the next 2 months. We don't know yet, but it's really exciting to just speculate on what may be.
Rick from the Tiger Cats Talk Network. Don't worry, Nick. Clements has an eye for talent. They'll be replaced with upcoming talent. Stars will be down the road. But Rick and Nick, to be fair, it's a business. But the only way you're going to build up this franchise too is people can identify with these guys too, Rick. It's hard to cheer for a team all the time when you don't know who the guys are. Obviously, they can't keep everybody with free agency, and it's a business. But Wynn McManus deserves to finish his career with the Toronto Argonauts, as far as I'm concerned. And like I said, I like all these guys you mentioned, Nick, but Wynn McManus, out of all of them, I really think deserves a chance to finish his career off with the Toronto Argonauts. And I have another viewer on too, the father of Daniel Oboye, Ty. Ty's watching. Thank you so much. I think guys on the team will do whatever they can to stay together. It's not always about the money. And Ty does have a point.
Yep, I sure hope so. I have to get on a tangent here because I got to shout out you, Dr. Ty Attaboy, and everybody else who was got out on the field in the celebrations. After they had won the game, we went out and we were in, I guess, what would be the northwest corner behind the Argos bench. We all hung out and we were all embracing the victory. We were all singing the Argo fight song. We were all chanting Argos. We were all waving our flags and cowbells and everything, just in a group of cheer, solidarity. And Adam Goss was very quick to say that there sure were a lot more Argonaut fans than any other fans in the stadium at that point. So strength in numbers. A huge shout out to everybody who was on the Argos boat, who made their way out to Vancouver. That was one part about it that made it so special, especially with your own dog in the fight in Toronto playing in the Grey Cup.
I wanted to ask you that, Nick. The stadium was full. I think they announced it at 52,000 people. Did you see any empty seats in that stadium? It looked pretty full to me.
Yeah, there was a little bit in the upper bowl, but the overwhelming majority of it was full for the majority of the game. That being said, you would think that Vancouver was in Manitoba, given that the crowd was very much in Winnipeg's favor. I'm not sure if it reflected on the TV broadcast, but it certainly was that way in the stadium.
Absolutely. And I'm just trying to I'm going to show a video later as well. I've got another comment here from Rick. What I mean is, look at Polk. He came out of nowhere this year and had an outstanding season. And Kevin Mattel had a touchdown in this game as well. So, yeah, Rick, you make a point too. As long as Pinball Clements is there, along with John Murphy and this coaching staff, the Argos, I feel, and Nick, I can
Well,
speak for you. The way this team is, I think they're built for long term success, not just
well,
one Grey Cup and that's it.
Well, the thing I do have to point out, though, is that John Murphy's actually already left the Argonauts organization. I think it's through the pipeline. I've heard it's
Okay.
becoming pretty prevalent that he's going to sign with the Calgary Stampeders to work with them next year. So it'll be between him leaving and then, of course, Vince Magri, who left at the beginning of the season to take a role as chief scouter with the Buffalo Bills. It's going to be there's going to be some holes in the scouting department that need to be filled. Just saying, if you need someone to go to a bunch of U Sports games and watch, I'll throw my hat in the ring.
And you know what? The Hamilton Tiger Cats are now looking for a GM. Ed Harvey went back to Edmonton. And since we're talking CFL news, the BC Lions fired head coach Rick Campbell. Nick, what are your thoughts of Rick Campbell being fired? And do you see him going to his father's former team, the Edmonton Eskimos or Elks?
Yeah, it does sound like the consensus is that he is most likely to sign in Edmonton. The thing I wonder, the question then is who's going to come into BC, because they had kind of a disappointing end to their season last year. We've already heard from the GM in BC that Vernon Adams will be shipped out, and it's going to be Nathan Rourke's team again. Like that's been cleared, cut and dry, according to 3 Down Nation. So the challenge is going to be how do you find or who's the head coach you're going to decide to put in that's going to bring a system that allows Nathan Rourke to succeed.
And we've got some viewers on, and I want to say thank you to Connor
Hey,
Solvay,
Richard.
Ty, the father of Daniel Aboye is watching, Michael Hendricks is watching, Steve Fontaise is watching, Richard Chung's watching, and of course myself is watching too. So make sure, Nick, you hit a like. But thank you everybody for watching.
Out of the year.
Yes, hey, they're saving the best for last. And we get another comment here, so this is great. Richard, it was great to hang out with Nick all day on Saturday. I would have liked to. I would have liked to gone, and I was disappointed I didn't go as media. But I did watch the game and watch the whole experience, and it looks like everybody had a good time, and it was nice to see a good crowd. Nick, wanted to ask you this. Overall, you thought it was a 5 out of 5. Was there any issues that you think the CFL needs to look at next year's Grey Cup in Winnipeg besides the PA announcer?
Yeah, I think overall though it was really well done. Like BC really went out of their way to try to put on a all-star performance. And I mean, we saw that too in the halftime show. They got the Jonas Brothers, and while it might not necessarily be in my cup of tea, it definitely had an appeal that drew fans who otherwise probably wouldn't have gone to the game. So that was great. The city itself did a really good job. I mean, if you go around the city and wander around, it's like any other city. You look at Toronto, you look at Ottawa, you knew about the things like the stuff in Hastings Street, and like that's a greater problem beyond anything that a host committee can do in terms of like the opioid crisis and stuff like that. But like the city was great. The events that hosted all the events were awesome. The convention center was fantastic. The CFL Fights Cancer event, as I already mentioned, was great, and so many people turned up. The joint was packed, and there were so many amazing giveaways. The game atmosphere itself was awesome. Maybe the other thing I could bash is that the lineups for the washrooms and the concessions and all that were a little busy. But I mean, when you're up to capacity for a 50,000 sporting event, I got to think it's not normally that like that in Vancouver when the BC Lions have a home game with, I don't know, 25, 30,000 fans.
Overall, what did you think of the stadium? Inside the stadium and outside the stadium.
The stadium was gorgeous. It's like everything that the Sky Dome had, but like 10 times better, because it's like it looked more modern. The lighting was better. The sound was better. There was no terrible sight lines in certain spots in the corner. You weren't a million feet away from the players if you were sitting on the front level. Like you had a it's a stadium that's really well built for football, and especially with the big capacity it's got, the fact that you can take the SkyTrain and get there fairly easily to commute with public transit, or you can still drive and find parking fairly easily, unlike in downtown Toronto. It was a really top-notch experience.
Does it have a retractable roof? And what did you think of the scoreboard?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird pseudo retractable roof. So there's like it has like a tarp over it, and it can partially open up, and that's where kind of it looks like a crown. So it pulls up, and then that opens up to let more natural light in, but it doesn't retract fully like the Sky Dome, for example, does. Um and then sorry, the other part, I forgot what you asked.
The other part was the scoreboard part,
Right,
the
the
video board.
scoreboard. Yeah. Well, they raised it high enough that I didn't think that we were gonna have the pretty odd kick hitting the scoreboard, and but it was nice too, nice and modern.
Ty Aboye saying, Chris, you guys have done a great job through the season. Well, Ty, maybe you could talk to the Argos about making us their official podcast show of the team. But I'm just kidding, Ty. I want to say thank you, Ty, for watching. And me and Nick both really enjoyed doing this. And we're trying to keep building our brand. And we really enjoy this show. And it's the people that watch the show that make it as well. So thank you so much. And one thing about the CFL, as much as I love the NFL, the CFL, I just find it's more of a family environment than the National Football League, which is more corporate. And I would have liked to go on to the Grey Cup this year, but maybe next year, Nick, even if I don't go as media, I think I'm going to really seriously consider going to Princess Auto Stadium as even as a fan as well. And by
Yeah.
the way, I wanted to get Ty's thought and everyone watching their thoughts, and yours too, Nick. Winnipeg Blue Bombers, 5 straight Grey Cups. They won back-to-back in 19 and 21,
No,
but they've lost 3 Grey Cups in a row.
I
Milt
know what you're gonna
Stegall,
ask. It's a no. It's a
Milt
no. They're
Stegall,
not a
Milt,
dynasty.
no, Milt Stegall still says it is, but to me, Nick, and I want everybody's feedback here. To me, to be a dynasty, you need to win 3 or more championships in a short period of time. Winnipeg was close, but I would say no. The Argos have won 2 in 3 years. If the Argos can win next year, I would say the Argonauts are a dynasty. 3 Grey Cups in 4 years.
No,
To me, 3 Grey Cups in 4 years is a dynasty.
no.
3 and
Five
4,
straight, 4 or 5 straight. You don't.
no,
No,
3.
no,
No, 3 and 4
no,
years. Yeah.
no, no,
Then
no,
then then
no,
you're telling
no.
me then the Chicago Bulls aren't a dynasty either. They three-peated twice. 3 times they three-peated and they won 6 NBA championships. To me, Nick, if the Argos win another Grey Cup next year, 3 and 4 years, yes, because that'll be 4 and 8 years.
What I
Because
will say makes what the Argonauts are doing so spectacular is that they've been able to do it with such a huge different group of players. What you look at, like you look at back in 2022 when they won, McLeod Bethel Thompson was there. He was the starting guy. And then he got injured in the Grey Cup, and Chad had to go in. When you saw the year after that, they went 16-2, had the same quarterback the whole time in Chad Kelly, and unfortunately they couldn't get the job done in the East Final. They didn't even make the Grey Cup. And then the following year after that, we saw Chad Kelly missed the first 6 games. They managed to squeeze a winning record out of it. And then Chad came back, and then he gets injured in the East Final. And then Nick Arbuckle ends up becoming the hero in the Grey Cup game. What I think does make it really impressive, though, is when you look at how things went about this season. I think at this point, this was by far the most impressive Ryan Dinwiddie season. Because like the 16-2 season was great, but it almost got boring to a point because they were so dominant so early in these games. This was one of by far the most entertaining seasons again. And I could rewatch every game back to back to back and just be amazed by everything that went on. I was on the edge of my seat from the entire time at the beginning of the year. I felt like if you know anything about Glenn Hall, who played goalie predominantly for Chicago and St. Louis for a number of years, he used to throw up before in intermission and after games because of his nerves. And I felt like that in that Grey Cup game at halftime. I thought I was under so much nerves watching that team play. I know everything fell in right within the game plan that they were hoping for because they only needed to be within arm's reach. But man, that put so much pressure on me just as a fan watching. I was so happy they were able to pull it off.
And you know what the weird part of this, Nick, is? The last time the Argonauts were a Grey Cup favorite was in 96 and 97 when they won back-to-back. But their last, 5 Grey Cups, last 6 Grey Cups, they've been the underdogs. And I'm starting to think, you know what? That should be the Argos model going forward. The Argos, the underdogs always, because it seems like when this team is counted out, and I picked Winnipeg, I admit it. I picked Winnipeg to win 27-17, and I was wrong. This team just seems to excel when they are considered underdogs, and they never do well as favorites. And in 2023, they were the favorites, and it's totally different when you're the favorites from being the underdog. So, and we've got Robbie Schneider on, our friend from Buffalo. Hey, Chris and Nick, congratulations to the Argos. Go Argos. Nick, Chad Kelly now has 2 Grey Cup rings. His uncle Jim has 0. So obviously, Chad's going to be bringing the Grey Cup back to Buffalo as well. It was a bad break for Chad, unfortunately, getting hurt in the East Final. And a lot of people really discounted this Argos team as soon as he got hurt. And for Ryan Dinwiddie and the coaching staff and the players, you got to give them a lot of credit, Nick. They didn't go and say, oh, Chad's out, we're done for the year. You know what I mean? Nick, thoughts on that?
Well, look at the iconic now moment when he was down there and he said, "Let's keep fighting, guys," and that's exactly what they did. And it was funny too because I was telling everybody. I told you and Marty York. I told everybody who I know at work and elsewhere, I said there's 44 other guys that are playing their hearts out each and every night to win this game. It's more than just Chad Kelly. And that's exactly what they proved there against Winnipeg at this Grey Cup. When the crunch time came, they wanted it more, and they proved it there.
Well, the secondary was outstanding too in this game. The Argos defensive line only had, I think, 1 sack in this game, but they did put a lot of pressure on Collaros. What was most impressive by the defense was, to me, the secondary play. And Nick, I wanted to bring this up. Everybody talks about Deshaun Amos, obviously, and Royce Metier, but I think Benji Franklin and Robert Priester need to get some credits too. And the Argos were the first Grey Cup team in a long time, I think, to get 4 interceptions in this game. And they even went and McManus had an interception. Really, the difference in this game was the turnovers. The Argos scored 27 out of 41 points off the 5 turnovers, and the Argos had the ball for 36 minutes and 18 seconds. And I think Winnipeg's defense kind of ran out of gas in that 4th quarter. Nick, thoughts?
Yeah, well, what was really shocking for me offensively was that right out of the gate, Winnipeg tried to throw the ball deep. You have the most outstanding Canadian running back player in the league, running back and Brady Oliveira, and your game plan revolved around throwing the ball deep. I could not believe it, and I guess they thought that the weakness was in the secondary, but yeah, give a ton of credit to Benji Franklin for stepping up. He had a phenomenal game there, and
You could
uncovering
add
those
2 picks.
passes.
He could have
Yeah,
had 2
yeah,
picks. He
he
had
dropped
one
the
in the
one
end
in the
zone.
end zone there that he should
Yeah.
have had. And then, yeah, give credit to Robert Priester. Benji Franklin went down, and Priester had to come in, and he ended up having that pick 6 and a little bit of
That sealed the deal. That sealed the
self-loading.
deal.
I have my point of view, my vantage point of that pick 6 I posted in my feed, and I know a bunch of you have seen it already. So you know how I felt when that happened, and but really I thought to me was the point that really turned the game around was when in the middle of the 3rd quarter, the Argonauts had the ball deep in their own end zone, and they marched down the field. That's what I thought actually was more important in that game than the interceptions, the pick 6s, the struggles that Winnipeg had late offensively, and in the stellar defensive play. I thought that what really helped clear this game for them, because we talked about it before. Nick Arbuckle didn't have to beat Chad Kelly. He didn't have to throw for 400 yards. He didn't need to throw for 6 touchdowns. They just needed good, slow, methodical drives. They needed to march down the field. They needed to wear out their the Winnipeg defense, they needed to put some points on the board, whether it was 3 or whether it was 6. I liked at the beginning of the game that, they get pinned they get to the 1-yard line. Unfortunately, they're not able to punch it in, but I like that they made the decision to take the points early, given that you looked at the last 2 games and what a strategic battle of attrition was. I know it was a difficult decision to make, but I think it ultimately ended up being the right one because although, yeah, if you get up early 7-0, you're in a really good spot. If you don't get into it and the crowd gets into it intensely in Winnipeg's favor, it's gonna put a lot of pressure then back on them. The one thing that they could not afford to do was at halftime being down in a huge deficit. And we saw they were only down 1 point, 10-9 at halftime. They were never in any huge panic mode because the game was always within reach. And we saw that they got the Rouge like very early, not intentionally, of course, but they got it very early into that third quarter in the second half. And they maintained control of the game and took advantage of the opportunities when they broke open, and Winnipeg wasn't able to.
And Winnipeg did get a lead of 7-0 and then 10-3. But I think the key was to keep that score 10-3. And then the Argos before halftime, obviously they didn't they didn't get touchdowns, but getting those 2 field goals by Liam, who got hurt in the game too, by the way. You got to give him a credit because I think one of his kicks or a couple of them, he was in pain. But hitting those field goals to make it 10-9 was huge. Winnipeg did not get a chance to go up 17-3, 24-3. So just keeping that game close, like you said, Nick, 10-9 at halftime was key. And then they got the Rouge, and then they basically took command of the game. The game wasn't decided until 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter when the Argos got all those touchdowns. But got to give them credit, man. Like I said, they took advantage of Winnipeg miscues, and Brady Oliveira only had the ball 11 times, and he still had 83 yards, including a 35-yard run. But Nick, they basically gave up on the running game, in my opinion, too soon. And you're right, they were going for the deep balls, and to me, they made a mistake. I think they should have tried to run the ball a little bit more because it wasn't like he was averaging 8.3 yards a carry. It wasn't like the Argos had shut him out completely, so there was no point in running the ball. So yeah, credit to the Argos coaching staff there. And the Argos secondary, man, very underrated. And every game in this playoffs, they came through. By the way, Nick, in these 3 games, the Argos scored 58 against Ottawa, 30 on the road against Montreal, and 41 against Winnipeg. That's pretty darn good for 3 playoff games.
Yeah, what I think was really, again, kind of to bring your point, I was kind of shocked about was their abandoning the running game so quickly, or even the fact that they didn't even try to bother trying to establish it early in that game, because we saw it right from the get-go. It was a 2-and-out because Collaros tried to go deep twice. And then when we saw, I think it was Nick Dembski who first went to the sidelines, then Kenny Lawler went out, then one of the linemen, I think it was Wallace, had some attention on the sideline, and then of course Collaros cut his finger on, I think I heard it was Derek Parrish's helmet.
Yeah.
But like the multitude of things that went wrong, and then you had the Lucky Whitehead fumble that was recovered by Jack Cassar. It was just a number of things that seemed to turn the tide. And then you would think with what happened to Collaros, you would think you would try to still establish the running game more with Oliveira, and they tried going to the air, and unfortunately with I'm not going to speculate on how bad the injury was and the stitches and all that, but yeah, Collaros couldn't make the throw like he normally would, and I think it was a mistake on their part, where if a guy's cut up that bad on his throwing hand, I think I know it's a tough decision because of Wilson not having the same kind of rest, but I think you still had probably a better shot with him being 100% than having your quarterback throw with half the power that he would normally be able to throw.
Mike O'Shea mentioned it. He said he basically told the media this: if this was not the Grey Cup championship game, 100% Collaros would not have come back. But because it was a Grey Cup championship game and Collaros did not want to come out, they put him in there as well. And
but then why are you throwing 20-yard passes with a guy who can't throw the ball more than 10? It just doesn't make sense.
I know. I know. I really do think Ryan Dinwiddie outcoached Mike Shea in this Grey Cup
100%.
game. Yeah.
Yep.
See, we agree.
Yep.
Hey, Nick, before we get to some more stuff, I wanted to play a little clip, a 3-4 minute clip of the Argos rally from Tuesday at the Scotiabank Arena. And then we're going to talk a little more about the Argos before we wrap up our 20th show of the year. Just let me know if you can hear the audio okay. And this is courtesy of CBC News, the Argos Grey Cup rally at Scotiabank Arena from this Tuesday.
With the Grey Cup in tow, they the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on Sunday to win their 19th CFL championship. And now Argos fans are gathering in downtown Toronto for the team's victory celebration. The man speaking right now is the coach for the Toronto Argos, Ryan Dinwiddie, and CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick is there live at the festivities. So Megan, what's the vibe like down there right now?
Well, the champagne has been flowing, Natasha. When the players came out on stage with the Grey Cup, they had a lot of bottles of champagne in their hands, filling up the cup and drinking out of it. So they were certainly having a good time. The crowd here is having a great time, listening to a couple of the speeches, cheering the players on. We've heard from Toronto's Mayor, Olivia Chow, who officially proclaimed today Double Blue Day in Toronto. We've also heard from some of the team's management and also from Pinball Clemens, general manager, who is no stranger to winning Grey Cups as a former player, and this is his second cup as general manager. As you mentioned, we're hearing from the coach right now, who is thanking his players, thanking his staff, and saying that this is the best city in North America, he just said, thanking Toronto fans for their loyalty and their passion. We've heard some of the speakers talking about the passion of the players, how they've gone through a lot of ups and downs this season, but they were able to pull off that victory on Sunday night. The fans here, who are very loyal fans, couldn't have been happier about that 19th win for the Toronto Argonauts, more than any other team in the CFL. Here's a little bit of what we were hearing from fans earlier.
We get a lot of slack from the league, from the rest of the league, but we're dedicated. We're small but mighty.
Our team is the best this city has to offer, and our city better get behind them because we deserve it, we earn it, and our guys are great.
The Tiger Cats have never won a championship since 1999, and we have won 5 of them.
Nobody gave the Argos a chance, and for Arbuckle to step in the way he did, just absolutely amazing.
We're hearing a lot of praise for quarterback Nick Arbuckle, who's standing right behind the coach, who stepped in to replace starter Chad Kelly, who got injured. He's up on stage as well with his crutches. There have been rounds of applause for both players and chants of MVP for Nick Arbuckle because he did win MVP of the game. So a lot of praise for the players. The fans, I think in here, are having a good time cheering them on.
Let's talk about the players then. What kind of time are they having?
Well, they've been doing, as I mentioned, they were certainly having a good time on stage, drinking out of the Grey Cup, but in interviews that they've been doing since the game, talking about how they're going to be celebrating all week. They say they're very proud of their win. They also said they had no doubt that they were going to win on Sunday night. Earlier this morning, one of the players stopped by CBC with the Grey Cup, Dejan Brissett, who is essentially a hometown player. He's from Mississauga, and he was named most outstanding Canadian player. Here's some of what he said about the win.
It feels great. You know, I did it for Toronto, but it's a team effort. You know, everybody contributed. This is an individual award, most valuable Canadian, but it says a lot about my team that I was able to win that. And it's really valuable for my family as well. You know, my brother has an NBA championship, so I was able to bring another one to the family. So it's really rewarding.
So a lot of celebrating going on for his family. His brother is O'Shea Brissett, and who plays for the Celtics. And so, yeah, the players obviously having a good time. We're starting to hear from some of them now. Natasha, a couple more speeches to go, and these fans here are loving it.
CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick in Toronto. Thank you.
That clip was courtesy of CBC News. Nick, since we got you on here and the video, what are your thoughts on obviously Nick Arbuckle as the MVP? Similar story to Nick Foles from the Eagles in 2017, and Mississauga native in your area, Dijon Brissett being the most outstanding Canadian. Thoughts on Brissett and Arbuckle?
Yeah, well, I gotta say, with the awesome turnout that they had at the rally, it was really great to see. I felt like Squidward in the meme where he's standing in his house looking out the window, and SpongeBob and Patrick are running around having fun. I got back at 7:30 on the Tuesday morning. I took the red eye back, and had to go to work right away. I was clocked in at 8, so I was unfortunately not able to be there. But it was great to see so many passionate Argos fans, a large number of which who were there out at the Grey Cup as well. Mind I give credit to. Yeah, like they said, we're small, but a mighty force, as passionate as any other fan of any other team. Yeah, but looking at like Nick Arbuckle and Dijon Brissett, Brissett definitely had the best game of any of the wide receivers. I think he made that spectacular catch. And then for Nick Arbuckle, I might make the case that he's probably not the best player on the field from that game. I would argue that between Winnie McManus in the second or in the linebacking core, and even Willie Jefferson, the defensive end for
Winnipeg,
Winnipeg.
Six tackles, 2 sacks, and an interception. He was outstanding.
I might argue those guys are arguably contributed more in terms of the stats and the impact, but in the kind of pressure that it was and the circumstances by it, the MVP of the game tends to be a very much more narrative driven story, and you saw it in the way that Nick Arbuckle reflected himself, in the way that the way he spoke after when he won. Like he was basically at a loss for words. Like you saw like him with his daughters hanging out and really being there for them and letting them enjoy it as much as he was. And then the post game interviews with the reporters, how well he was interacting with them, and then even there at the Grey Cup ceremony, like almost still processing it all, because it's like, it to me, I took it as like, I can't believe this actually happened to me, because as we know in the storyline, like he was less than a month away from just quitting football altogether, and they signed him there in Toronto after, of course, Chad Kelly was suspended for the first 9 games, and then when we saw him in Guelph. My dad and I, and you for that matter, we saw them in Guelph in practice training camp. We saw them at the Double Blue game, and Pinball happened to come over to us when we were watching, as he always does. He says hello to everybody and thanks them all for coming out, because not many people come out at the early days of training camp to watch the teams get their act together. And one of the things my dad had said to him after the Double Blue game was Nick Arbuckle looked really, really good, and all Pinball could do was smile. So it and you never know when your number might be called, and to rise to the occasion, and that's exactly what Nick Arbuckle did. He didn't have to be this god quarterback like Madden on cheat mode when you're playing against the easy AIs. He did exactly what he needed to do, and did it well enough that it was more than enough for them to defeat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the Grey Cup.
Hey, Nick, I know we brought this up before, but when is Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment going to put a statue of Michael Pinball Clements? Look at how much he's meant to this Toronto Argonauts organization. 8 Grey Cup championships. He has as many championship rings as Bill Belichick does, and Pinball Clements has really been the identity of this Argonaut team since 1989. And to me, there should be a statue of Pinball Clements outside of BMO Field, just like they do with the Maple Leaf greats. There's no reason why there shouldn't be something done for Pinball Clements. I know he doesn't have a big ego and stuff like that. He's very humble. But to me, when you think of the Toronto Argonauts, Pinball Clements, he's got 3 as a player, back-to-back as a player, 1 as a coach, and 4 as a GM and president. And to me, he's he's the engine of this Argonaut franchise.
Well, I think it comes down to the fact that he's still building his legacy, and he's continued it. He continued it this week when they won the Grey Cup, and he's continuing to build it next year. I think whenever he finally decides, okay, I've had enough, I'm done with football forever.
That should be done now. It should be done now, as far as I'm concerned.
Hey,
They,
keep winning, baby. If they keep winning, that's the thing. Like I don't see why there's any motivation to step back if they did it. Like we didn't say quit in 2022. Why are we gonna say quit now in 2024?
I'm
If
not
he,
saying that. I'm just saying right now he's done more than enough than anybody in Toronto sports. Think about it. The
yeah, that,
Toronto
yeah.
FC, the Blue Jays irrelevant. The Maple Leafs haven't won nothing since '67. Whether pinballs continues on next year or 5 years from now, to me, right now is the time to honor him and have a statue outside that stadium. There should be a pinball statue and a John Candy statue, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, we'll just have to wait and see because I definitely hope there'll be something more concrete like that rather than just the seats on the stone benches that have Pete Martin receiving a touchdown catch there. Would be nice to have something a little bit more iconic. That being said, I know I have the Royal Copeland jersey up there. Wrong name on the back per se, because of course that number hasn't technically been retired, but that was the same number that Pete Martin wore, and you bet I wore that during the Grey Cup. And shout out to Mike Hogan for posting a little tribute to him, and yeah, you got to think wherever Pete Martin was, he was smiling down on the Toronto Argonauts that day, knowing that they were able to pull a Grey Cup victory out for him.
By the way, Joe Crow, here's something for you. Robert Priester's 61-yard pick six interception, which was a huge play in this game, is the second longest interception in Grey Cup history behind Joe Crow's 65-yard interception in 1945. Just something for you to mention. And Nick, I was going to say this too. We've spent about enough time with Penball Clements and that. One thing I wanted to make an announcement is I did renew my season ticket for 2025, and anybody watching this or listening, you can go on members.argonauts.ca/new or contact Alex Christie at Christie@mlse.com. Even though the season ticket prices have gone up in 2025, it's still the best value for your buck in Toronto, considering the Blue Jays, the Maple Leafs, the FC, and the Raptors. So I'm hoping next year they'll get more season ticket holders and hopefully keep building the fan base going forward, Nick.
Yeah, well, I think we see that reflected over the last 3 years because of the success they've had, not just in general, but also at BMO Field. They've really made it their home, and it's become one of the toughest places to play, second to only Winnipeg. So they're in a really good spot.
And Nick, why should people watching this live streamed or audio consider, and they're in the Toronto area, why should they consider being a 2025 season ticket holder with this Argonaut team, besides the winning on the field product?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think when you go to the Toronto Argonauts games, because they only have the 9 plus the playoff game, it really becomes a full day experience. It's not just about going to the game, you watch the game, you go home. There's way more to it than that. There's football fans from all parts of the city who come down. That tailgate starting at like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning. They get the barbecues going, they get the smokers out. They're roasting. If you know Ginger Argo, you get some of the craziest concoctions, armadillo eggs, bacon wrapped stuff. Like there's just some incredible things that people do. They fundraise, like a lot of the stuff that these guys do. Like if you're hungry, like they'll give you food, but if you're willing to pitch in, raise some money for CFL Fans Fight Cancer, donate the winnings. And then that's all just before you get in the game. It's a great social event, of course, too. You bring whatever you feel like drinking. You socialize with other fans. For me, it was a little bit nerve-wracking starting it out before I became into the podcasting and all of this stuff. I was an Argos fan, but I didn't consider myself too diehard. All you have to do, go to one of the tailgates, go to anywhere there, and just come up to other Argos fans and say, "Hey, I'm so and so. How do you think the Argos are going to do this year or this game?" And just you can start it off really easy, and like everybody's here because we care about this team. And if you're willing to show that interest and that passion for the team as anybody else there, you're going to be accepted and won in. It doesn't matter if you have a jersey. It doesn't matter if it's signed. It doesn't matter if you have hats. It doesn't matter what you've got. Like, we'll get you fitted up with Argos gear. We'll get you in there. And then when you go to the game, it just becomes, it's hard to describe, but it just, you become so passionate in with it. Every football game is a battle. It's a game of inches. It's a game of yards. It's always a constant battering of trying to strategically outsmart and outplay your opponent to march the ball down the field. It's just one of the most exhilarating things to watch of any of the sports. And I think because of the way that they got rid of the scrum in the 1900s, you're using that whistle in between plays. You're building anticipation and adrenaline. If you're a fan, you're out there, you're stomping your feet, you're ringing your cowbells, making noise to throw when you're on defense, to throw the offense off guard. It's all of those things that really allows the crowd to stay engaged for the entirety of the game. And I think that's what I hope that I reflect in my passion for the team and what a lot of other fans do, because you see it at the Grey Cup, especially when there's fans of every team, even though only 2 of the 9 make the show. There's the same kind of commitment and passion for all of them, and then you become part of a family, no matter who you cheer for. It's something that's unlike anything else I've ever experienced in any other sport, and it makes it one of the most greatest things on the planet.
What were some of your most memorable Argo games this season, and favorite episodes of the Argo Bounce live audio show?
Oh, that's a difficult one, putting me on the spot like that. For me, looking back, I really enjoyed the CNE game against Saskatchewan. So that for sure was one I really enjoyed. I actually enjoyed, believe it or not, and despite the records being 0-3 to them, I actually really enjoyed being in Hamilton for the Labor Day game. You sort of embrace being the villain there, and it becomes a lot of fun if you take that kind of lighthearted approach. Yeah, and then I guess looking at the episodes, I find this is always harder to look back on because I kind of tend to forget what we talked about on particular shows. But I do kind of like last week being the guy who stood alone as the one who believed in the team to win. Maybe it'd be a little different had the Argos lost in the Grey Cup, but I think, when you get the bragging right against Chris Pomay and the great Marty York, that's something you get to kind of brag about.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. You know what? Every game I went to as a fan or media, I enjoyed every one. The CNE one was pretty good too. It's just it was like it wasn't an easy season for this team, but adversity builds character, and this team, I think, was better prepared to win a championship than they were in 2023, which was a great season as well. And Ryan Dinwiddie's done a great job with this organization, and I expect 2025, maybe they'll have some new players on the team, but I expect this team to be very competitive next year. And Nick, before we wrap this up shortly, do you feel the core will be back in 2025? And do you feel this team has a good chance to repeat as Grey Cup champions in the Grey Cup next year at Princess Auto Stadium in Winnipeg?
Well, it's not going to be everybody, but I got to think a good chunk of the players will be back. I actually really like the prospect of having Nick Arbuckle come back as QB2. Of course, that leaves some openings for potentially a third string guy. I don't know if you're going to be able to keep both of Arbuckle and Duke, so it's a decision to make those guys. Where you really worry about is the defensive side. Whereas in last year, it felt like a lot more of the offensive guys were being let go. Like AJ Oled, of course, being one of the big ones gone, and you see some substantial change in the receiving core. But I think this year it becomes really defensive change because almost all the DBs are pending free agents. So many D linemen are pending free agents. But the big thing I think that is really key is that the offensive line is still very largely the same. Landon Rice, Isaiah Cage, and Gregor McKellar are the only 3 offensive linemen who are pending free agency. Everybody else is sticking around. And when you've got a quarterback in the league like Chad Kelly, who's proven that he has probably, I would say, top 3 at least arms in the league, he needs to have a good line in front of him for protection. And for that matter, wide receivers, the only guy who's pending free agency right now is Coxie and technically Janarian Grant. So all of those guys, those weapons are going to be back as well. So where you're going to see big change probably next year would have to be on the defensive side and maybe the special team side of the football. But I think offensively, they're going to remain largely the same.
I do agree with you on one thing. They're not going to be keeping Brian Scott and Cameron Dukes, both of them. One of those two, unfortunately, is going to be moved on. Kelly, number 1. Arbuckle, I would like to see him number 2. I think he wants to stay in Toronto. I can't speak for him, but it also comes down to money too. So we'll see what happens there. But I definitely think it's a good situation right there, having Kelly there and Arbuckle, and I do believe Brian Scott can be a good quarterback in the CFL as well, and same with Cameron Duke. So unfortunately, Nick, you're not going to be able to keep all 4 of these guys on your roster. So somebody's going to have to go, and I feel it's either going to be Dukes or Arbuckle.
Yeah, the only challenge I have, which is not a knock against Cam Dukes, the only thing I think is that that's a challenge for him is that because he doesn't have the same kind of power arm as Kelly and even Arbuckle for that matter. I think the only thing is if you're going to keep him, and I'm not saying that like don't bother trying to re-sign Dukes because he's a great quarterback. But what I think they need to do differently with Cam Dukes is take more advantage of his mobility, run something more like a run and shoot concept if you know you're using him. And I compare that to, say, Winnipeg, for instance, where Zach Caleros is very similar in a lot of ways to Chad Kelly. But you saw Strevler come in a lot of times before he got injured and in past years as that different look quarterback. I really think you can make something work with that with Cameron Dukes, and where you run a lot of play action, a lot of RPOs, a lot of pitch and run, things like that, where you're not sure necessarily whether, especially with weapons, guys like Deontay McMahon or Kadeem Carey, you fake the pitch off to him and you keep it yourself and you run up. I think Cam Dukes is a guy who has that mobility more so than some of the other quarterbacks in the league. I really would love to see them try something like that. But then again, the challenge in that is that you're then having to try to now coach an entirely additional concept to the stuff you've already know. So that only really works with a team like Winnipeg, which has had a lot of the core pieces stick around through the years. I could see if 35 of the 45 players stick around next year and the majority of the offensive guys, of course, you can make something like that work, which I could see them maybe potentially doing. But I think if they're going to turntable and they're losing half their offensive guys, then it becomes a lot more of a challenge because you almost have to kind of step back from the beginning to teach their concepts, which I just don't necessarily think Dimwey's coaching style necessarily goes as well with Cam Dukes as it does with Nick Arbuckle or Chad Kelly.
I totally agree with you, Nick. And finally, Nick, thoughts on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? Obviously, the Grey Cup is at Princess Auto Stadium next year. Mike O'Shea's not going anywhere. Kyle Walters isn't going anywhere. Their GM. Where does this team go? Because obviously this core hasn't gotten it down the last 3 Grey Cups. So
yeah,
you can't host the Grey Cup next year in Winnipeg and say, yeah, we're gonna tear this sucker down. But you're not going to win a Grey Cup with this core, obviously, the last 3 years. So the Blue Bombers, Walters and O'Shea and the coaching staff, they got some decisions to make how they want to keep this juggernaut going. But it's going to be an interesting offseason for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Yeah, the way I look at it, well, for starters, if you think they're in a bad situation, Imagine what they're feeling in Calgary right now, because they're now got the Grey Cup 2 years from now, as it was announced earlier the week before the Grey Cup, and like they're an even bigger mess, because they're the ones that really have to clean house, start from the bottom, and really rebuild if they want to make a push to be at their home Grey Cup 2 years from now. But for Winnipeg, I think where they really need to go is they need to start trying to find a way to look younger. Um, the challenge, though, of course, is you are sacrificing a lot of guys who are proven talents. But I think you got to wonder, like with some of the guys who are on the injured list coming into this Grey Cup, you lost Dalton Schoen, you lost Adam Bighill. There are a number of guys that they lost, Strevler, of course. So there's Tarski being another who didn't play in the Grey Cup. So I think with between injuries and players just simply getting older, like Willie Jefferson, who had an outstanding game, but like this was his 10th year in the CFL. You look at Stanley Bryant, this was his 14th. Patrick Neufeld is his 13th. Like, I think the thing you're really worrying is how much energy, how much gas in the tank do they have left to keep going? And I think, unfortunately, I think it's starting to run out, and I think you're going to have to find a way to somehow turn towards youth in order to make it work. So it very well could be poaching guys from other teams. It could be someone like Isaiah Cage from Toronto, if the extent of his injuries don't look too bad. So I think that's kind of the thing that they're going to have to do, and it's not going to be an easy decision. But I think eventually, at some point, you're going to have to say, yeah, we need to start looking younger again.
Absolutely. And in football, every season's different. So we'll see what happens. But Nick, I want to say thank you for doing this again this year. We just finished our 20th episodes. And final thoughts, Nick, before we wrap up our 2024 Argo Bounce season.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been 20 shows already. We're down to the end of the year, and this is the third year, I believe, we've been doing this.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm really grateful, as always, especially this year, for everybody who's tuned up. The amount of people who at the CFL Fans Fight Cancer event or in the party halls, whether or not they know me for who I am, which I'm just some guy who rants about the Argos, to have people come out and recognize me and getting to talk football to them, just the enjoyment I have for talking Canadian football with other fans of the league is something I am always grateful for. And the only thing I can say to Argo fans is come back next year to Guelph and be with the team right from the beginning, because as great as it is to celebrate a championship, what is really the special part is when you go back, you look at it, and you were supporting the team from their very early beginnings in Guelph. There was, I think when I went the 2 times, there was like maybe a dozen of us who went on the opening day of camp, and then a couple of us who went for the double blue game. When you that level of committed, it's no better feeling in the world. And I know the players respect it, especially in a city like Toronto. These guys kill to be recognized, and they appreciate it with every ounce of their heart. So that's all I can say to anybody. If there's ever anything Argo related, just show up, because the team will always appreciate and support you the same way you support them.
And make sure you get your season tickets again. Go through the Argos website, members.argonauts.ca new, or contact Alex Christie at alex.christie@mlse.com as well. And I want to say thank you to everyone watching this on our live streamings, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, X, and Instagram. And thank you to everyone listening to this show on all our audio platforms. And this year we were on WQEE 99.1 FM as well. And I'm now a part of Stream Punk Entertainment Network out of New Jersey, New York. And they like our CFL content. So we will be on Stream Punk entertainment as well, starting next season as well. Nick, I just want to say thank you so much. The season went by quick, and I'm already looking forward to training camp in Guelph in May of 2025. It's going to be another interesting off season around the CFL, and we'll see you soon, and we'll do another show before training camp starts in May in Guelph.
You bet. As always, go Argos.
And where can people follow you on social media?
As always, you can follow me on Nick_Small_38. I have the same first name, last name handle on Facebook. And I'm also on Instagram. Replace the underscores with periods, and you have my Instagram handle. I haven't done the blue sky migration yet for anybody in Twitter who knows about that. I haven't really decided what I'm going to do with that yet. If enough people are leaving Twitter for reasons to go there, I might just cross post, at least for the time being, create a new account and post on both the same things until it's pretty clear where everybody's still hanging out. But for now, Twitter's the best place to be.
Hey, Nick, before we wrap this up, I forgot to mention this. The Argo secondary did a great job on Kenny Lawler. 7 targets, only 2 catches, 27 yards. They basically took him out of this game after he had, 4 catches or 7 catches against Saskatchewan, 177. So, again, shout out to the Toronto Argonauts secondary, their defense in general, and their coaching staff. And 2024 Grey Cup champions, 19 Grey Cups, and now we're 4 ahead of Hamilton. Peter Dawitzki, he keeps telling me Hamilton's won 15, but I said, as the Hamilton Tiger Cats, you've only won 8. But I guess they still feel like they have 15. But you know what? At the rate Hamilton's going in their 25-year drought, Toronto's going to have that record for a while, and that's just amazing, man. 25 Grey Cup appearances, 19-6. That's like the New York Yankees in World Series, by the way. So only the Yankees, I believe the Yankees and Montreal Canadiens have more championships in pro sports than the Toronto Argonauts. I think they're even ahead of the Green Bay Packers. So I think the Argonauts are number 3 overall in championships.
Well, try going 8 straight, because, of course, as we've seen just within the last 5 years, the Montreal Canadiens fell short to the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Stanley Cup final, and the New York Yankees couldn't beat Shohei Ohtani this year in the World Series. So the Argonauts have the most impressive streak at 8 in a row.
Yep, and that's gonna wrap it up, Nick. Hey, I want to say thank you again for doing this again this year, and I renewed my season ticket, and I will be back as a season ticket holder, and hopefully I'll be doing a little bit more media coverage with the team next year and around the CFL as well. And check out the CFL website at cfl.ca, and the Argonauts website is argonauts.ca. And if you're looking at season tickets, I would highly recommend it. Nick, thank you so much, and as always, go Argos.
Go Argos. See you later, Chris.
See you later, Nick. And again, everybody, I want to say thank you to everyone watching this live streamed and on audio platforms for supporting the Argo Bounce Live audio show. Hope to be back for season 4 next year. We're going to try to do an episode before training camp starts in University of Guelph. But I want to say thank you also to Chris Belinovich and the Toronto Argonauts organization for giving me media opportunities to cover this team. And I've been very lucky. The 3 sports teams I cover right now, 2 out of the 3 are champions. The Buffalo Bandits, back-to-back National Lacrosse League champions, and the Argonauts Grey Cup champions 2 out of 3 years. And I will hopefully be back, fingers crossed, with the Buffalo Bandits starting in December to cover the Bandits lacrosse season, which starts up in December, as well as the Bandits are trying to three-peat. But again, this wraps up the Argo Bounce Live audio show for the 2024 season. Again, thank you to everyone watching and listening to this show, and to Nick Small, and anyone out there watching and that has a business that would like to come aboard our show next year as a sponsor, please DM me or Nick Small as well. That's about it. As always, go Argos. And again, congratulations to the 2024 CFL Grey Cup champion, Toronto Argonauts.
together fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go! Go Toronto Argos, go, go, go! Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they